Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Coming up, we're going to be speaking with State Senator John Bramnick, who represents the 21st Legislative District. Now that takes in parts of Morris, Somerset, and Union counties. And we're going to be talking about what's happening everywhere from the Upper House in Trenton to his backyard in Westfield, New Jersey, where the latest hit on Netflix, The Watchers, take place. First, though, we have a special conversation with the one who sets the agenda in the lower house. That is the Speaker of the Assembly, Craig Coughlin. He is my first guest, so let's get to it. Mr. Speaker, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Nice to be back again. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well. I'm very well. So you and your fellow Democrats have been working on a new 6-bill package that will help boost new and existing small businesses in the state. So let's talk a little bit about the state of small business in the state. So how is this package going to accomplish that?
Well, it's going to accomplish it in several ways, Laura. You know, the first time I was on, I guess it was back in April or something, we talked about 5 of the pillars in housing and food insecurity and childcare and affordability. And this was another of those pillars, and that's helping small businesses. And, you know, we all know small business is the backbone of the state, employs about 2 million people. So you can see where there's a small number of employees in each place, and they may not have the wherewithal to do some of the things that they might want to do. It also, we want to help out people who are trying to start new business, that entrepreneurial spirit that helps people throughout the state who have aspirations and dreams. So we're doing a few things. One of them is to create a small business manual so people can rely on that to go and find out what they need to do to get a business started. It's as direct as that. You know, you can spend a lot of time online, or you can go and find a manual, and it'll help walk you through it. One of them is to collect feedback on the metrics that can tell us how the state's doing relative to helping small business. You know, every time all of us stay at a hotel or go to a restaurant, you often get a survey saying, how'd we do? Well, the reason to do that is to find out how they did, so that you can fix what's working or what's not working, and fix what, and build on what is. Having a statewide data bank of vacant commercial properties. You know, the world has changed after the pandemic. There's going to be lots of opportunities for vacant space that may suit the needs of somebody without them having to go throughout the state or contact a realtor in various different places. Facilitating mentorship. I know there are business people who successfully navigated the pandemic and have been around for years. I won't be surprised that many of them are willing to share their experiences and their expertise to help small business owners get started. This is a way to help do that. One of the things that happens to small businesses is they have a lot of compliance requirements, but sometimes they make a mistake. Doesn't mean their intent is to do anything that it doesn't necessarily jeopardize people. You have the wrong sign up, or you have a sign in the wrong place, rather than relative to employees' rights. So the first time around, we're not going to fine anybody to do that. Let them say, hey, look, here's how you got to fix it. It's more of a helping tool than not. Obviously, if there's something that's dangerous, obviously if there's repeated violations, then those things are different. But that first time, oops, I made a mistake. Oops, you made a mistake. No harm, no foul. Just fix it. And that's, I think, a good common sense way to help somebody who's getting started.
I was going to say, well, a lot of people don't even realize that the state has resources, that there is the Business Action Center, aimed at helping small businesses. People don't even necessarily know, they don't know what they don't know. So, like you mentioned, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but you mentioned there was a manual for small business. So would they go, where do they go to start finding out this information?
Yeah, well, the bills have just been up. They've just gotten introduced, and so they're going to work their way through committee. I suspect they'll have broad support, probably broad bipartisan support, and so we'll get those done, and then we'll put those things in place. I would imagine a website of small business owners that says, go here and find the manual. Click here for vacant properties that we're aware of. Interested in finding a mentor, click here and we'll link you to somebody that. Engaging the business action centers, as you talked about, Laura, that they're a terrific resource that we should take advantage of. Helping them to figure out how they can be more competitive online. We so much of our shopping, particularly as I don't know if we get it up in time for this year, but as the holiday season rolls around, People will be able to do that, or for gift giving throughout the year, or just to find places to eat or do whatever. Um, One of the things that is very frustrating for small business owners is the timely, costly in construction process. So we've come up with a way to try and help expedite that by using other resources and letting people be able to expedite that process. That will get them up going. Um, Leveling the playing field for government contract is something that we think will be good for small businesses, for minority-owned businesses, for women-owned businesses, trying to strengthen that and let them build on it, because that's a good way to grow your business, right? To have a customer base that you can rely upon, and that is going to, you don't have any collections issues, right? It's maybe a little slower because you got to file the paperwork, but somebody who's doing that. So, and then helping traditionally disadvantaged owners. By framing goals through the lens of equality. How do we do this so that these people who are chasing the American dream, or but who have traditionally not been who have been excluded or limited in terms of their ability to get involved, doing those kind of things. So that's a broad package. It's not a great expense to the state, so we're not spending a lot of money on the project, but we're helping, I think, in a very fundamental way, small businesses throughout the state.
What kind of support do you have from the Chamber of Commerce or for New Jersey Business and Industry Association? What about people outside of the State House?
So we've been reaching out and meeting with those folks and talking to them about those things. We've gathered some input from them in crafting the bills. So I think we should have support from them. They recognize how useful some of these tools will be, and so I think they'll be supportive of that. The action.
I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about the state budget and some of the resources that are available to people and when it will be available, because there was there's been some back and forth over, well, there is help out there because the cost of living is something that affects everybody, and people were saying, some Republicans were saying, well, it doesn't do enough quick enough, but there's been some changes, do I understand it, that more money will be available or rebates will be available faster?
Well, when you're talking about the Anchor program?
The Anchor program.
Okay. So, yeah, we passed in the budget a $2 billion property tax relief program that is going to be in effect. You start to see it now. People should have gotten now.
Right. So what should people be looking at? Like, I saw something come in the mail and it said Anchor. Yeah. And I said to my husband, I said, pay attention to that. It's not, it isn't junk mail, right? So people are getting in the mail, it's Anchor. At Anchor, it'll say Anchor on it.
It'll say Anchor, exactly right. And it'll be a form to fill it out. And there are income eligibility requirements. The 2 million people in the state of New Jersey should benefit it, because it also applies to renters. So if you're a renter out there, don't toss it away. It applies to you as well. And so those are out now, and the goal is to get those checks processed, well, obviously as fast as we can, and be in place for January.
Recently, you were in Washington, D.C., and you alluded to this a little earlier about some of the topics that are very passionate to you. And it was a conference on healthcare, I believe, and access to food. And one of the issues that you're very passionate about has to do with food insecurity. So, the lack of access to food in many of our urban areas. So can you talk a little bit about your recent trip to Washington, D.C.?
Sure. Thank you. It was an honor to be invited by the White House to participate in. It was on food insecurity, nutrition, and health. And it's the first of its kind in nearly 60 years. The last time that the White House did this was back when President Johnson was in office. And so, and things like WIC came out of that program. So the president was there. He spoke on the issue, and and is committed to ending hunger by 2030, which is the kind of big, bold uh, action that we need. The other thing I think most importantly, Laura, is that it brings attention when the president gets behind something. It brings attention to the issue, and I think that's one of the things that we've done very successfully in New Jersey is bring attention to the notion of food insecurity and said we're not going to accept this anymore. We're not going to tolerate it, and we have to make a real commitment to it. So we have done that through legislation. We've done it by investing. Last year in our last year's budget, over $85 million to help food pantries, because all of us, and I can tell you this is true with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, it just offends the conscience that people go to bed hungry. And so people are prepared to do it. What we need to do is make it take on the fight and make it a priority. And so we've done that. And that was the beauty of what we came out of. Now, what was really nice is hearing that we have, we've passed 30 pieces of legislation on food insecurity. We have the first in the country food insecurity advocate or office of advocacy. So what other states are talking about aspirationally, we're doing in many instances. Like two of the things that we have done well and will continue to do, I guess, as we look forward, is address the need for free breakfast and lunch at school. That's something that other states are working on. We've done it. We just passed a bill that would expand it by another 25 or 26,000 students. And then my goal is to get every student free lunch and breakfast, because it becomes stigmatized if everybody doesn't get it.
Okay, see, now that is very, I was thinking why extend it for people who can pay, but that is a very interesting point. And now that, when you think about it, it's like, oh yes, the kids who are there early sometimes are the ones who may not have access to childcare, whose parents may not even be able to be in the picture, and they're the ones, and it is stigmatizing.
Yeah. It is. It's stigmatizing, and the result of that is that students who really need and would benefit from it and would have their performance enhanced don't take advantage of it because they don't want to be seen as the kid who can't afford it.
Right, and it takes effort to go and to because you want to blend in, no matter what grade you're in, you want to have friends. You don't want to, even if the resources are available. It's sometimes hard to ask, Sometimes at my own kids, I'm like, please eat your food. Oh, I'm busy. I want to hang out with such and such. Well, they're not eating, and and I can see how that could be a very vicious cycle by those who really, really need it.
Absolutely, yeah. And so we've done that. We've continued to expand it. Other states are still working towards that. The food insecurity offers us a challenge, but it's one I think that we can really make a profound difference in.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the time you took to talk to us. And when you see, as a homeowner, renter, what have you, if you see something that says Anchor on it that comes from the state of New Jersey, open that mail up. There's property tax relief in it. Fill it out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you again.
With us now is Republican State Senator John Bramnick. John Bramnick represents the 21st Legislative District, which takes in parts of Morris and Somerset counties. Senator, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
Well, there's a lot going on in Trenton right now, and one of the big issues that the Bar Association has been very concerned about is the lack of, there are so many vacancies on the court, and including the state Supreme Court, 3 vacancies. 2 nominees were just approved. Can you tell us a little bit about the process and how you've addressed this as a Republican, as part of the minority party in Trenton?
Well, it's almost comedy because in some districts where you have to appoint a judge, you got to get 3 senators and the governor to agree. So I don't know what the joke is, but trying to get 4 politicians to agree on anything, especially if they're Democrats and Republicans as senators, you can understand why it's a slow process. But it's also, I think, a good process because the screening process is pretty intense, but it slows everything down. But you still need cooperation from the governor and all the senators in that district, and you can imagine what that entails, right?
Yeah, yeah. All right, so we had the nominations of Douglas Fisali and Rachel Wayner Apter. I want to make sure I pronounce that right. Now, can you tell us, you were saying before we came on that one was a no-brainer, another one was a little bit more complicated. Can you explain
Well,
that?
Doug Fiscali, who I know is actually from Westfield, New Jersey, has been on the bench for 18 years. He was a certified civil trial lawyer. He spent years as a Superior Court judge and appellate division judge, meaning that his record is 100% clear. He's made a lot of decisions, written hundreds of opinions, and getting an LLM in judicial studies. This is like the #1 candidate in the history of candidates. On the other hand, Rachel Wayner Apter, who I like personally, and I did vote to vote her out of committee. On the floor, the reason I couldn't vote for her, and most Republicans didn't, is because all she's had really is been an advocate, meaning she really just took up causes her entire life. And look, I'm not arguing with the fact that that's good to have causes, but she didn't have any judicial record, no judicial experience, and only practiced law in the state of New Jersey for 3 years. So I think it was more like she had a political agenda rather than a judicial agenda. So, and it's difficult to vote against anybody in my judgment because she's intellectually qualified, but just an advocate is not enough to know. She should be on the bench for 38 years. I think we got to get away from advocates and get into measured, moderate people on the bench.
Right. Well, when there is a holdup and when people are not appointed, some people might think, well, the state Supreme Court doesn't affect my day-to-day. It's more the county, the family courts. But there is, it definitely affects people's day-to-day lives. So can you talk a little bit about the process and how it impacts on people right now if you all don't find somebody to get into those spots?
If we're talking about delays in the Superior Court, or what I'll call the trial court, that is really bad, because if you have a landlord-tenant matter, you're a landlord, you want to get your rent, or a tenant and you've got a problem with the landlord, it may be years before you can get to a judge. Same thing in an accident case or a criminal case. The bottom line is judges are really, really important, and we need to fill all those positions, because it really does. Delayed justice is a serious problem. So, yeah, that has to get done. And I think Nick Scuteri and Brian Stack, who are senators involved in this process, I think they're starting to move it along.
When you talk to people about what their concerns are out and about in your district or wherever, inevitably the cost of living is an issue. Security and safety, when students are back in schools, and we hear a lot about gun legislation. Is there legislation right now that is pending that you are pleased about, concerned about, have your eye on? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, clearly crime is a very serious problem. Not only in our state, but around the country. So we have to amend the bail reform bill, because it seems to me that no matter how many times you're caught, you're still out in the street. I worked with both the urban mayors and the police chiefs to try to move a bill that would put people with guns in jail, because they were even getting out or they were getting bail. So crime's a major. Taxes are always an issue. But I can tell you that what people don't like is politicians fighting. You see in the media, you'll get the crazies on each side, the moderate, the reasonable, the people who compromise. That's what the public wants to see. They're not seeing enough of it. And I was with former Homeland Security Secretary Mike Chertoff recently, and he said the fact there's such polarization is actually a threat to the democracy. And if there's a threat to the democracy, there's a threat to you and me. So we really have to, the public wants us to work together, but it doesn't sell newspapers, if you know what I mean. So if I go out and talk about compromise or working with the other side of the aisle, people go, oh, yeah, what are you, some sort of Democrat? You're not a Republican. The public wants us to work together, and they're sick and tired of us fighting.
Well, especially when you're in the minority. Democrats have control, obviously, of the governor's office and of the Senate and of the Assembly. You're a Republican. To get anything posted, you're going to have to work with Democrats. Has that, or does it cause you problems within your own party sometimes?
Well, if I act reasonable and I don't act crazy, sometimes the crazies in my party go like this, you can't compromise. Really? Well, if you look at the voting of our country and in our state, sometimes it's 55-45 or 52-48. Bottom line is, if you don't, not everyone thinks the way you think. That's why you need legislation that's a compromise. I find when you have compromise legislation, it's reasonable, smart legislation. So if people want to say, "Oh, he's too moderate," he's too friendly with Murphy, like this, what I'm doing is I'm doing my job. I'm not going to be a nut, and I'm not going to sound like a nut. And if they don't want to vote for me, that's fine. But I'm never going to be a crazy.
Yeah. So you're saying you put your constituents above your own political self at times. You also, when you were running, one of the things, you ran a great commercial about how quick you could respond if somebody calls you. And this is actually, you've been recognized for how quickly you were one of the most responsive, if not the most responsive legislator in Trenton. So can you talk about how that helps, or does it get in your way because they know they can call you and you're going to call them back? Can you talk about how that's going?
I grew up in retail business. My dad had a store in Plainfield for 40 years. And as soon as a customer walked in the door, my father go, "Hey, customer." I go, "May I help you?" Right? You call me on a cell phone 7 days a week. The only thing that's going to block that call is my wife when we're out for dinner. And I got a backup phone. She's taken my phone away a number of times. But here's my thing. I feel as if it's disrespectful if I don't return your call immediately and try to solve your problem. And I love it. And the reason I love it is because sometimes I can't fix the big problems, but I can fix the little problems. No, it gives me endorphins to help people. So they can call me as much as they want. Somehow, people just don't call you that much. I used to tell my mother, call your politicians.
Yes.
They're more responsive than anybody, or they should be.
And people sometimes think, well, nothing's going to happen, or they're not going to return my call. But they have offices of constituent services, and if they call you, they will actually get you. You will pick up the phone.
Well, what about nothing's going to happen? Let me tell you, we can get almost anybody on the phone. So as a state senator, if I call up, I don't care what it is, I can pretty much get to somebody. So and what's terrible today, you try to call an entity, I don't care whether it's an insurance company, or even you try to go to a local police station, sometimes nobody's picking up. I guarantee you they'll pick up when I call. Because guess what? If they don't, I'll do a press conference the next day and I'll say, "Let me just tell you what happened yesterday." And then all of a sudden they call me back.
Yeah.
Treat people with respect and dignity. One of the reasons we have so much frustration in society. You ever try to call motor vehicles?
I was going to say, can you help me with motor vehicles?
I can.
Literally, I was there with my son yesterday, and I think I'm going to pull my hair out.
Next time, I don't know, next time you do it, I go with you and I stand and I watch. I walked into motor vehicles once in Springfield, and they go like this. "Yes." I said, no, not yes. "Good morning, how can we help you?" They look at you, what? I go like this. That's how we treat people in the state of New Jersey. "Excuse me, you can't say good morning, how can we help you?"
So interesting you bring that up, because I'm with my 16-year-old to get a permit, and he said, "Mom, I don't understand why they act this way." And I don't want to, point anyone out. Somebody could have been having a bad day, but it was his first interaction with state government. He said, "Is this how it's going to be anytime I have to do anything?" It was a very negative experience, and just seeing how certain things went, and it was confusing. Nothing is clear.
It's clear, all right. It's clear. They act like they don't care about you, and they make your life harder. Let me tell you, I go in there, it's not happening. And it's not happening because I'm going to videotape it and say, what kind of disrespectful person is this? Look, I'm not saying the job's easy, but if you don't like your job, get out, quit.
Right. Well, I wanted to ask you a question about, you were in the Assembly for many years. This is your first year in the Senate. You took over the seat held by former State Senator Tom Kean Jr. So how has the transition from the Assembly to Senate been?
It's different. First of all, it's half the number of people. So it's 40 versus 80, which changes the dynamic. Second, they have what's called courtesy. So if they want to appoint somebody from my district or towns I represent, I have to sign off on it. So we all are much nicer to each other, because you never know when you have to walk across the aisle and say, "Listen, my friend's up for a judgeship," or I've got somebody who needs this position. So senators are generally really, really nice to each other. And the governor's office has to be nice too, because we have courtesy, meaning my signature has to go on many, many forms. Otherwise, nothing moves in Union County.
Well, we definitely want to have you back on, but before I let you go, Netflix has a show about something that happened in your backyard in Westfield. It's called The Watcher. I know this isn't political, but I just have to get your take. Have you watched the show? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, the show, I got to tell you something. I didn't see any houses like that in Westfield. Now, we have some nice houses, but over the water, I mean, I don't know what Westfield they're talking about.
Yeah.
To tell you, what's confusing to me is if I'm getting threatened, and I've been threatened in my years in politics, if someone threatens me, I don't worry because nobody gives you a heads up when they're going to hurt you, right? They just hurt you, right? So I never got really that concerned about a letter to a family that they're watching a house because, as I said, people who are really dangerous, they don't give you a heads up. Bottom line on that, what was interesting is the lawsuit where the family that bought the house against and sued the family that owned the house and didn't tell them that they were getting these letters from the Watcher. That case was dismissed, but it's an interesting case in the law. No one knows who the Watcher is. I don't know why. Seems like you could catch somebody like that, but the Watcher could still be out there. But let me tell you something. He can watch me. Come on, take a look.
Oh, I love it. Well, Senator, thank you so much for taking the time to talk everything New Jersey, including the latest hit on Netflix about a house in Westfield, New Jersey. Thank you so much.
I'm going to be watching your show.
Oh, good deal. Good deal. Thank you, Senator.
Bye, Laura.
And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thank you so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.